Right, so hello and welcome back to Books and Things and welcome to another video. And welcome to my TBR for my upcoming TBR Clear Out Readathon. So, if you don't know what the TBR Clear Out Readathon is, the premise is very simple. The idea is that for the whole month of April, from the 1st to the 30th, me and the other people participating in the readathon will be trying to get their physical TBRs down by reading the books on their shelves that they have been neglecting. Whether that is books that have been on your physical shelves for a really long time that you haven't got to yet, or books that you're just not that excited about anymore, or books that you are picking from your shelves at random. I am focusing on my physical TBR, the books that are behind me on the shelves, but you might want to focus on the unread books on your ebook or on your Audible. So I will link down below the announcement video and also the Goodreads group. Please do participate if you would like to. So I have got quite a big and long and ambitious TBR today. One of the reasons why I initially planned this TBR Clear Out Readathon to be in the month of April was because I was supposed to be going abroad on holiday for 2 weeks in April. Obviously, due to coronavirus and the current world situation, I'm not going to be going on holiday abroad for 2 weeks. However, I do still have 2 weeks booked off work in which me and my fiance Nick are going to be having very much a staycation, and hopefully I will get a lot of reading done. And then for the rest of April, when I am working, I'm working from home, and like much of the rest of the world right now, I'm not going out in evenings and on weekends, so I should have quite a lot of time to read this month. And I figure I may as well put it to good use and distract myself from current world events by reading a lot of books that I have been neglecting for a long time. So my plan this month is to get my physical TBR down quite a lot. In this jar I have folded up on scraps of paper the names of 45 books on my shelves that I have not yet read. This is not every single book that I have on my shelves. These are the books that I had on my shelves before Christmas 2019, so any books I got for Christmas or I've acquired since are not listed in this jar, but this is my sort of long-term TBR. It is currently at 45 books. I would quite like to get it down by the end of April to 30 books, so read 15 books at least. However, because I am ambitious and I like to set myself targets, I thought I would put 20 books on my TBR just to see how far I can get. So my main focus for the month of April, reading-wise, is going to be getting down my physical TBR and reading some of the books that have been on my shelf for a really long time. I don't feel like my physical TBR is too big in terms of the amount of unread books I own. I don't mind having that many unread books on my shelves. What I mind is that some of those have been on my shelves for 10 years. So let me finally actually get to the books that I'm going to be reading for the TBR Clear Out Readathon. And what I have done is picked 10 books off of my shelf, and then the other 10 I'm going to be picking out of my TBR jar at random, and we will see what they are. But let me get to the 10 books I picked off my shelf first and why. So the first 5 are all books that I have borrowed from people for quite a long time. I think the one that I've had the least time I've had for like 6 months, and I think the one I've had the most time I've had for like 6 years. And before anyone thinks that I'm a terrible, terrible human being, the book that I've had for 6 years, the person I lent it to has had one of my books for 6 years, and I think we basically did a book swap. I'm not sure whether we actually lent each other books. I think we've just probably decided by this point that we just gave each other the books. So the first 2 books I am counting as borrowed books for this, in that I should have read them ages ago when they were lent to me. However, they were both lent to me by my fiance. We didn't live together at the time when he gave me these books, but we do now, so I don't really have to go very far to give them back to him. But I feel I should read them because he lent them to me about 5 years ago, and it's probably time that I read them. The first is Wolf Brother by Michelle Paver. This is a middle grade book. I think it is fantasy, but I'm not completely certain. It could be historical, and I think it follows a young orphaned boy who is on his own in the world trying to survive, and the only companion he has is a wolf cub. I've been meaning to read this for ages. It was one of Nick's favourite books when he was a kid, which is why he lent it to me. And recently I kind of remembered it because Michelle Paver's new novel, Wakenhurst, sounds amazing, and I really want to get it and read it, but I don't feel in good conscious that I can read it until I've read this. So I think I'm going to finally get to this in April. Then I also have this. This is another middle grade book and another one of Nick's favourite from when he was a child, and this is Montmorency's Revenge. This is part of a series. I've read the rest of the books in the series quite a few years ago now, and I really enjoyed them all, and I just want to get to the final one. The books are aimed at children, but they actually follow an adult character mostly, and this is a man called Montmorency who kind of lives a double life. It's set in Victorian London, and he acts as a gentleman by day, but then also like uses the sewers at night to lead a double life. I can't remember the rest of the series that well, but I'm sure I will get back into it quickly because they were such wonderful books and really, really good fun. This is the book that someone lent me 6 years ago that I haven't given back to them yet, but as I said, they still have a book that I gave them 6 years ago, so it's all fine. And this is The Vor by B. Cackling. I think I will really like this. I just need to actually read it. It's been on my shelves for so long. It is a fantasy novel set in this world called The Vor, which is a vast, endless forest, which in itself sounds really interesting. I don't know too much about this, but like I said, it's just been sat on my TBR for way too long, and hopefully I will finally get to it this month. Next, I have Lechia in London by E. Benson. This is a book that someone from my writing group lent to me last year because they thought I would enjoy it, and I just haven't got to it yet. And this is a classic from the 1920s, and it follows a woman called Lechia who moves from the countryside to London and how she fits into the 1920s in London life. Next, I have Lost Boy by Christina Henry. A friend of mine lent this to me about 6 months ago when we were having a chat about like retellings of popular stories and fairy tales. This is a retelling of Peter Pan. I think it's YA, but it might be middle grade. I can't completely tell from the cover, but it comes very highly recommended from a friend of mine, so I'm looking forward to this, and again, it should be quite a quick read. The next 5 books are 5 books that have been on my physical TBR for the absolute longest. The 2 books that have actually been on my physical TBR for the longest, I'm not planning on reading in April because they are The Hunchback of Notre Dame and The Count of Monte Cristo, and both of them are exceptionally long classics that I want to give space to, and I don't want to try and like pack into a readathon where I'm trying to read a lot of books. Like, the purpose of this readathon is to get my physical TBR down, and that's not going to work if I spend 2 weeks reading The Hunchback of Notre Dame. However, the next 5 books I'm going to talk about have all been on my shelf for a pretty long time. I think I've had these ones for between 4 and 8 years, so yeah. This is Bedtime Stories. This is an Everyman Pocket Classic edition. This is an anthology of various short stories. So I actually started this. I got like a decent chunk of the way through. I think I read like 100 pages about 5 years ago. I don't actually know how long I've owned this. At least 6 years, but possibly even longer. I might have had this for 10 years. And I think I just stopped reading this because it's an anthology and every story is written by a different person, so I didn't have like any compulsion to read on. But actually, I think there were probably some really good stories in here that I would really enjoy, so I'm gonna try and actually read this in April. I am not gonna go back to the beginning because it's a short story anthology and I have read those stories. I know it was a while ago, but I don't really feel the need to reread them. But I will start from page 100 and hopefully finish this off in April. Next, I have A God in Ruins by Kate Atkinson. I read Life After Life by Kate Atkinson when I was 21 and I loved it so much, and it was one of my absolute favourite books that I had ever read, and I just thought it was incredibly amazing. And then like a year after that I read a short story collection of hers which I didn't love, and then I just haven't read anything by her since, apart from like a couple of short stories here and there, and I don't know why, because I loved Life After Life so much, and I bought God in Ruins like just after that when I was like 21, and I just need to read some more by her, and I need to read this because this is connected to Life After Life in some way. It follows one of the characters from Life After Life in the sort of mid 20th century, the 1940s onwards, I think, and it follows his life and I think the effect of World War II on the life of this man who is a pilot, as far as I know. I don't know much more about it than that, but I loved Life After Life so much, and I just don't know why I haven't got to this yet. Probably because it's slightly long, but actually I remember flying through Life After Life, so yeah, hopefully this I'll read in April. Then I also have The Satanic Verses by Salman Rushdie. I read Midnight's Children in my first year at university when I was 18. I adored it. I bought this very soon afterwards because I wanted to read more by Salman Rushdie, and I have not read it since. I have not read anything else by him since. I don't know what I'm going to think about this. I don't know if I would love Midnight's Children as much if I read it today. I think part of the reason why I loved it was because I was studying it and I hadn't read anything like that before. But I'm curious, so we will see. Next I have Number 11 by Jonathan Koh. I fell in love with Jonathan Koh's writing when I was at university, and I read 3 of his books within about 4 months. I read What a Carve Up, The Rotters Club and The Rain Before It Falls, and I loved them all. And I have not read anything by him since. I have not read anything by him since I was 21, and I don't know why. This is a proof copy of Number 11. This book came out in 2015. So I had this for at least 5 years, and if not more. I picked this up when I was working at Foyles, which feels a very, very, very long time ago now. So it's just time that I read it, really. I think it is a very political book, so it might feel a bit dated now. However, I love Jonathan Koh so much, and I just don't know why I haven't read anything by him since. So I'm gonna finally actually read this in April. I'm really gonna prioritise this one, I really am. I also have Death and Mr. Pickwick by Stephen Jarvis. This I think I've had for about 5 years, and I just keep meaning to read it and keep not reading it. This is inspired by Dickens, as you may be able to tell. It is set in 19th century London, and I think it follows the character of Charles Dickens interacting with a character of Mr. Pickwick. So it's kind of like blending elements of Dickens's life with elements of his work, which I think should be really interesting. Basically, the reason why I haven't read this yet is because this book is really long. It's 800 pages and the writing is really small. However, I do think I'm going to really like it, so I am going to try and read it this month. I think this will be one that I tackle when I'm off work and I have like lots of time every day to dedicate to reading and to just like properly get through this and read it alongside some other books maybe, because I just think I actually will really like this, but it's been on my shelves for far too long. So those are 10 books that I want to try and get to in April. As I've been going through those 10 books, I've realised that some of them are really quite long. So whether or not my initial goal of getting 15 books off my TBR is achievable, I don't know. And I feel like my potential target of 20 is looking less and less likely. But I'm still going to pick 10 more books out of my TBR jar, and we'll see what they are. So aha! The first book I have picked out of my TBR jar is Ruin's Wake. Ruin's Wake by Patrick Edwards is a science fiction book that I've had on my shelf for probably about a year. So the author, Paddy, is actually someone I know. I was on my creative writing masters with him, and I have read some of this book in its very early stages and loved it. So I'm very excited to read this. I just haven't managed to get around to it yet. But as I have picked it out of my TBR jar, April might be a good month, especially as I think his next book is about to come out as well. It is a science fiction novel set in a future world where there is a totalitarian autocratic state. Like I said, I've read some very early bits of this and remember loving it, so I'm excited to get to this and hopefully I will read it in April. And the next book I'm pulling out of my TBR jar is gonna be The Muse. This is The Muse by Jessie Burton. I have been meaning to read this for ages. I read The Miniaturist, I think 2 and a bit years ago now, and I absolutely loved it. I thought it was so fantastic, and I got this very soon afterwards and I haven't read it yet. But I think I will really love it because I think Jessie Burton is an amazing writer. And this is a dual narrative, I think, set between the 60s and the 30s, and I think the woman in the 60s is unravelling a mystery held by a painting that was done in the 1930s. I love a dual timeline, I love a good historical mystery, so I think this one should be fantastic. And the next one out of my TBR jar is The Keeper of Lost Things. This is The Keeper of Lost Things by Ruth Hogan, and this follows a man who has spent his life collecting lost objects, and as his life begins to draw to a close, he assigns his assistant the task of connecting these lost things with the people who originally owned them. I don't know much more about it than that, but it sounds absolutely fantastic. I've heard very good things about this, so I think it should be really good fun. And the next book I am pulling out of my jar is The Faculty of Indifference. This is The Faculty of Indifference by Guy Ware. This is another book by an author who I know. Guy is the winner of a short story competition that I was shortlisted for, and we appeared in the same anthology together, and I've met him a couple of times. I went to the book launch for this, which was really cool. This book sounds absolutely fascinating. This is about a man who works in the government department called the Faculty of Indifference. His wife died some years ago, and I think this book follows his relationship with his kind of work and also his relationship with his son and the difficulties they have in their relationship since the man's wife has died. I think this should be really, really good. I love the short fiction that I've read by Guy, and I enjoyed the reading from this at his book launch, so I'm excited to get to this one. The next one I have picked out is Wine/Pinball. This is Wine/Pinball by Haruki Murakami. I have read quite a few Murakami books, and I don't know how I feel about Murakami. I loved Norwegian Wood a lot, but the other 2 books I've read by him since, Kafka on the Shore and Colourless Tanozeki and His Year of Pilgrimage, both of them I hated. So I don't know how I'm going to feel about this, but I have heard good things, and I am interested in reading some more Murakami because I do think there are some elements of his writing that I like. I feel like if I read this and don't like it, I'm probably done with Murakami, but we shall see. We shall see. Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. This is Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. I read Everything I Never Told You by Celeste Ng a few years ago and absolutely loved it, and I just have not yet got round to reading anything more by her. This has been on my shelf for about 2 years, I think, and I think it's going to be fantastic. I loved her first book so much, and I've heard amazing things about this. I think it follows various families in a small town in America and their relationships to each other, and I've just heard such great things. I think this is going to be excellent. This is The Truth About Archie and Pie by Jonathan Pinnock. This is actually another novel by a writer who was on my creative writing MA. Like with Ruin's Wake, I have read some sections of this when it was in a very early draft stage several years ago, which I really enjoyed, and I'm very excited to actually read it. I've also read a lot of Jonathan Pinnock's short stories, all of which I've really enjoyed. He's a fantastic writer and an incredibly funny writer, so I think this should be a really good and fun read. It is a mathematical mystery following a man who attempts to solve a murder mystery of two mathematicians who are killed for their mathematical secrets. If it is anything like the bits that I have read previously, it is going to be absolutely hilarious. The Runaways. This is The Runaways by Fatima Bhutto. This I was sent for review either a year ago or 2 years ago. I can't remember, it's been on my shelf for a while. I think it's set between England and India, and it follows three characters who are running away from things in various ways and kind of how all of their destinies converge. Aha! Take Nothing With You. This is Take Nothing With You by Patrick Gale. I read A Place Called Winter, I think in 2018, and I absolutely adored it. I thought it was an incredible novel, and I've just been meaning to read something else by Patrick Gale since. This has been on my shelf for, I think, a year and a half, and I just think I'm gonna love it. It ticks all of the boxes for the things that I will love, in that it is a, like, looking back story about memory and music. It's about a man who, while undergoing medical treatment, has to be locked on his own in a room for, I think, 48 hours. And as he looks back on his life and his childhood, growing up, learning to play the cello and kind of coming to terms with his sexuality. It sounds amazing. I love Patrick Gale's writing. I hopefully will read this month. Right, I'm gonna pick the last book for my Readathon TBR. What's it gonna be? The House of Impossible Beauties. So, The House of Impossible Beauties. This was a birthday present I got, I think last year, but it might have been the year before. This is set in the 80s, and I think it follows a cast of characters who are connected by a gay and transgender club that they all go to. I don't know much more about it than that, but that sounds interesting in itself. I am intrigued, and hopefully I will pick this one up this month. Looking down at the two large stacks of books I have on my floor, I feel like I have been overly ambitious. I definitely don't think I can read all of these books this month. I think the first 10 books that I spoke about, which are books that have been on my TBR shelf for a really long time, I think I'm going to try and prioritise them as much as I can. However, I also feel like I should be able to get to more than 10 books this month, especially if I'm off work for 2 weeks. I think I should be able to read a lot in April, and it would be really nice to make a dent in my physical TBR, and it would be lovely to read a lot because the world is currently a bit stressful. Along with those 20 books that I'm putting on my TBR for the readathon, there are a couple of other things that I'm planning on reading in the month of April. One of them is The Castle of Otranto by Horace Walpole. The reason why I want to read this in April is because Erin from With the Classics is hosting a 18th century readathon this month, 18th century April. I will link her channel down below. Basically, her and a bunch of other people are going to be reading 18th century literature for the whole of April. I planned my readathon before I knew about her readathon. I think we probably both planned it around the same time, but if I wasn't doing this readathon, I would be joining in with her, so I kind of want to join in with it in a little way. However, I don't have any unread physical books on my shelf that are from the 18th century, so I thought I would get an 18th century book that is very short, that I've been meaning to read for a while, and read it so that I could, like, participate in spirit even if I'm not reading very many 18th century things. So, The Castle of Otranto by Horace Walpole. It's on my Kindle. I think it's only like 100 pages. I'm hoping to read this in April to participate in Erin's readathon. That's the only book I plan on physically reading in April that won't be for my TBR Clear Out Readathon. However, I do also listen to lots of audiobooks. Me and my fiance Nick often listen to audiobooks together, especially if we're both off work for 2 weeks, and in our flat we'll probably listen to a few audiobooks together, and obviously they won't be from my physical TBR, so I might read a couple of audiobooks with him this month. And then the audiobook I'm planning on listening to myself in April, which I might not finish in April because it's very very long, is the audiobook of Our Mutual Friend by Charles Dickens. So, Our Mutual Friend by Charles Dickens is my favourite novel ever. I have read it 5 or 6 times, but I have never ever listened to it on audiobook. The audiobook I have is one from the Dickens collection. I think it's narrated by Mira Sial, and I'm incredibly excited to listen to Our Mutual Friend. I love listening to Dickens on audiobook, and I've never listened to Our Mutual Friend, and it's just my favourite novel. I've read it lots of times, and I think it's going to be a really exciting experience to listen to it, because that will be an entirely new way of experiencing Our Mutual Friend, and I'm just so excited to experience it in a different way for the first time. The audiobook is, I think, 35 hours long, so I might not finish it in the month of April, but I thought it might be nice in what is a somewhat stressful time in the world to reread one of my favourite books on audiobook. So that is my plan for April in terms of audiobooks, and then all of my physical reading, with the exception of the one 18th century book, will be for my TBR Clear Out Readathon. I also probably will be doing some reading for work in the month of April. I work in a publishing house, so I do have to read some books for work, but as I have 2 weeks of annual leave in April, and I won't be reading any books for work during that time. Hopefully during April I should be able to mostly focus on books that aren't for work. This has been a much longer video than I intended it to be, so I'm sorry if you've been here for like 20 minutes. Please let me know down in the comments if you've read any of these books, if there are any of them that you would like to encourage me to get to immediately. Any booktube friends of mine, if there's anything you want to buddy read with me, please do let me know. I'm really looking forward to the TBR Clear Out Readathon in April. I think it should be really good fun. So hopefully lots of you guys want to join in as well. If you would like to participate, please let me know. Please leave your comments down below in the description. Please tell me what you're planning on reading. Please tell me if you've put up a TBR yourself. Please join the Goodreads group and chat with everyone. And yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back very soon with another bookish video.